Coming to the frame of mind, when you are performing good deeds, you have one frame of mind, that is feeling of elation, and when you are performing bad deeds, the frame of mind changes, that is to feeling of guilt. It is something like you beautify yourself with all the cosmetics and then go and jump in the mud. Then, after some time, uh, come back and clean yourself, again beautify and jump in the mud. Where it takes you? It does not take you in any direction. Decide consciously which direction you want to go and do not have wavering mind. If you want to progress in the direction of truth, side up completely with good deeds and never look back. For some reasons, if you have to move in the negative direction, be conscious that your movement is in the negative direction, and that thought itself will slowly result in change of direction at an appropriate time or at an opportune time. We see in this world that there are innumerable life forms taking birth, living its life, and then meets with death. During living, for the same life form, some are comfortable while others are not. For example, one such life form is a bird. There are birds enjoying their life with free movement wherever they are, and there are birds which are held captive sometimes under horrible conditions. Coming to human beings, some are born rich and some are poor by birth, some are healthy while some others are born with deficiencies by birth, etc. There is no any rational explanation for all this, and the only explanation reasonable and realistic is attribution to past karmas, that is, resultant effect of good and bad deeds in the current and previous births. Pleasure and pain in life. Though the beginning and end of the journey is same for all life forms, starting from God's abode and reaching back, the in between journey is unique to each soul. An individual life form goes on enjoying the pleasures and pains during this journey. The cycle time and path is unique for each soul journey, and accordingly the pleasure and pains experienced through the cycle times vary. For example, mind of soul K1 may have experienced more pleasures and pains than that of mind of soul K2. Similarly, mind of soul K3 might have experienced more pleasure and pains than that of mind of soul K1. That means K varying from 1 to infinity. As the mind of soul Kx goes on enjoying the pleasures and pains, it gathers experiences, and at some point in the cycle, when the experience is ripe enough, it gets a glimpse of the truth, and that makes a lasting impact on the mind towards liberation. For some, it is early, and for others, it is a bit late, and for none, it is never. You see in the picture, pleasure versus pain. Uh, Cumulative of pleasures, that is k is equal to 1 to infinity, is equal to cumulative of pain k is equal to 1 to infinity. In other words, it is to say that at any point of time, the amount of pleasures for all the people put together will be equal to the amount of pain for all the people put together. The second one is n is the number of birth, n is equal to 1 to liberation. Pleasures for K1 is not equal to n is equal to 1 liberation pleasures of K2. That means for the entire cycle, The pleasures experienced by one soul need not be the pleasures experienced for the other soul. Same way, the total sigma n is equal to 1 to liberation, pain for K1 is not equal to pain for K2, that is n is equal to 1 to liberation. That means the pain also in the entire cycle from birth, from first birth to liberation for K1 is not necessarily equal to pain of for K2. So as I say, it is given here, Kx is individual soul, n is number of birth. Now, like a diamond can be cut with a diamond only, a bad desire can be overcome with a good desire of higher intensity. So, to move in the right direction of truth, we have to cultivate good desires, and our prayers shall be focused to achieve this. There comes a point when we realize the truth, we wonder what do we desire, whether good or bad, since everything is nothing but a dream and not a reality, as we thought of it all the time. We have been thinking that it is true all the time, and now we realize that it is just a dream. When this point of liberation is reached, the effect of all pleasures and pains are nullified, and so also the desires which are the seeds of both pleasures and pains. As we started with zero, we end up with zero balance, but rich with knowledge about truth and our real nature. Now comes the question how we can overcome the effect of both good and bad deeds. Obviously, the solution, either total or part of it, lies in this birth and is in our hands. What is common in this world to all living beings? I presume they are enjoyment and suffering. Let us ask a question why they are common to all living beings. That is because every life at the time of birth has resultant effect of good and bad karma associated with it. Let us see how we can nullify partly or whole of the two effects. Every birth is an opportunity to do this. Naturally, good karma keeps our life smooth, enjoyable until the whole or part of it is spent or nullified. Some of it is in our hands, and the rest of it is with destiny to decide. No doubt that enjoyment is part of human life. Mankind has been enjoying all the pleasures in this world, and there has been a constant endeavor for finding new pleasures. Of course, all the pleasures are enjoyed through sense instruments and by the mind. You see the picture, kinds of pleasures. There are two kinds of pleasures, one which attract pain and the other which does not attract pain. The first one on the left side you see are the pleasures which does not attract pain, like enjoying a beautiful scenery, enjoying affection of children, enjoying pets, enjoyment through meditation, enjoyment by doing service. All these does not attract pain. Whereas there are on the right side you see pleasures which attract pain is drinking, gambling, and then going to clubs, then eating non-veg, and then hurting animals, thereby getting enjoyment. All these attract pain. These are some of the examples of both categories. Let us see what are the pleasures at play. When we go out to see the beauty of nature, we enjoy through attachment of eye and mind, Added to that, if there is a cool breeze, we enjoy through touch perception also. That means two sense faculties are involved in the act and mind is always attached. But then at the end of the day, when we return home, we are exhausted. We normally relish eating tasty food. Eating food is a real pleasure for many people. Both tongue and nose involved in this enjoyment. But sometimes overeating causes distraction. Similarly, when we see a movie, eye and ear enjoys apart from mind. Often we supplement with enjoyment of another sense faculty, namely tongue, through it is in the movie. But at the end of the movie, sometimes our mind is corrupted and results in headache. When we drink liquor and resort to gambling, there is enjoyment, but they are destructive. You see the pleasures at play. You see in the picture, the first column is a type of enjoyment. The second column says which faculty, that is sense instruments, are involved in the pleasure activity, and finally final column gives end result. So you see, right from one sense faculty to all the five sense faculties along with mind enjoying in the picture at various events of enjoyment. Also, there is a caption: do you miss pleasure and energy available at no cost? That we will see it later. The act wherein all the sense organs enjoy and which is responsible for sustenance of life in this world is sex. As long as it is kept divine, it is a noble act. It is the one act which can result in union of bodies, union of minds, and union of souls. But then sex results in exhaustion and drain of energy. Now comes an act in which all the cells in the body and the whole mind is regenerated. You feel blissful, your body goes lighter, you derive strength from this act, unlike all other earlier acts of pleasure, and which takes you in the right direction towards truth. This act is called meditation. But you have to go a long way internal to yourself to achieve this status. After all, nothing comes without hard work. So, the earlier caption which we have seen is that do you miss pleasure and energy available at no cost? So, the act of meditation does not involve any cost, but it gives very good results. The effect of good karma is a good thing happening to us by way of enjoyment or by way of good birth and all that. Now let us see nullifying the effect of bad karma. How we can nullify the effect of bad karma? How can we nullify the effect of bad karma? What is the way out? As I know, the only way to nullify this is through suffering. It is suffering in life which reduces the effect of bad karma, for which the concerned life is only responsible. Another way of looking at it is that when you are suffering, you are doing a good job of nullifying your bad karma, either part or whole of it. That is why every life has both enjoyment and suffering. Only the quantum will vary from life to life. We are all familiar with banking process. In general, it is our practice to keep some money in savings when affordability is there for future use or needs. Why do we do this? I cannot say with certainty that I will see tomorrow. Anything can happen at any point of time. Still, we plan for future and betterment. Extend the same logic to future births. If one wants to be better next birth, he has to do good deeds or follow dharma in this birth. There is no other way. It is a different issue if someone knows this but still follow the path of adharma either due to circumstances or due to greed. First of all, we should know which way is the right path. Having known, the individual life has the freedom to choose either of the two. It is in this context sustenance is critical and buddhi or intellect acts like a brake and try to direct the mind to steer in the right direction of our future life. The picture you see there, the driver of our body is a bit of wild thinking. We have taken the parts in the car and the driver and the total car itself for comparison with our life. So you see there on the top, fuel is the life, and our headlight are the senses, battery is the willpower, and then engine is prana, steering is the mind, and buddhi acts as a brake. The entire car is the body, our human body, and the time is compared with the wheels of the car, and the driver of the car is Atman. That is the ultimate consciousness which is driving our body is Atman. With this, we are completing the sustenance part, and we are entering into the destruction, that is the third phase of the cycle, which we have seen earlier. Generally, there is a tendency in our thinking that destruction is a bad activity. We think there is more to lose than to gain in the process of destruction. One of the best ways of coming out of this stigma is to imagine what would have been the consequences in case if there is no destruction process in place. The rule of this universe is a continuous change, and destruction is a necessity to impart this continuous change. Sometimes the change can be better, and sometimes the change can be painful. Change can be good for some people, and the same change may be troublesome for some others. To go more fundamental, destruction means going back to its original order. Everything in this universe, which is made of material, that is matter plus, and energy, will go back to most subtle stage, thereby becoming non-material at the end of the universe cycle, and remain in the form of soul, and static period will prevail till the next big bang, where dynamic period will start. In a way, death is synonymous with destruction. Though we are familiar with death as the opposite of life, the life cycle encompasses birth, sustenance, and death. Sometimes destruction causes death, the unnatural death due to accident and natural calamities, etc. This is an unnatural death, and sometimes natural death occurs due to aging process. The moment death happens, the process of disintegration starts. We often refer to death of non-living stuff also, such as stars, etc. The death of a star is due to running out of nuclear fusion, and when it happens, the disintegration process starts. It is very interesting to note that when a living thing meets with death, the process of disintegration takes over and continues in stages till nothing is left out. Only the time of decay varies depending upon the stuff it is made of, but it is certain that even the hardest material is consumed and vanishes over a period of time. Look at the grandeur of creation of the destructive mechanism, and we are totally humbled by that. You see the picture of destructive mechanism from ought to not. That means right from death, start of integration process, it is ensured that everything is taken back to its original state. That is all the matter connected stuff. We are seeing vast amounts of matter and energy pervading the entire universe. How come all this is $1 million question? We can conveniently assume that it has come from nothing or has come by chance. As long as we live, we take utmost care of our body, and since death is inevitable for any living thing, one day or other, individual life has to leave the body. Now, the process of disintegration starts, and the above slide enumerates the grand design of God that takes the disintegration process to its logical end, that is, going back to fundamental particles. No need for any order, no need for any invitation, no need for any payment, and the destructive mechanism takes its own initiative and completes the task wherever it is and whenever it is. Look at the ecological balance in nature, in which one feeds the other, and literally everything is someone's food, which acts as a control mechanism. It is said that in nature nothing goes as waste. You see in the picture food chain, one is preparing food for the other. That is, for a worm is preparing food for the chicken, and chicken is preparing food for man, and we are preparing for mosquito our blood. So, we are a small link in the endless chain of material transformation. That is the idea in this picture. As we have seen earlier, material is bound by time for continuous transformation. And what is bound by time is perishable and cannot tag on with non material, that is soul, indefinitely. Hence, at some point of time, the soul, which is changeless and everlasting, finds the human body unfit for tagging or bondage anymore, and it has to move on, leaving the material behind. This process is what we call as death. This is not only applicable to mankind but every life form, and it is universal. What is the difference between life and death? It is widely believed that soul leaves the body at the time of death. Since soul is the spirit of life, once it leaves, the mechanism of life acting on the human body ceases to act, and the human body becomes mundane and is subjected to disintegration. That is why our sages consider death as a change phenomena of soul associating with new and fit material. This journey continues till realization, which our sacred text calls it as transmigration of soul. How much we learn from creation, we also learn from destruction that much, if not greater. Destruction teaches us the process of detached attachment. Destruction teaches us that nothing is permanent in this world and maybe in the universe also. Every life starts small, gets adolescent with full energy, wanes during old age, and meets with death. This process happens with body, mind, intelligence, and memory also. There are only two options available before us. Either you voluntarily give up your attachment through practice of detached attachment, or else you will be forcefully detached from all your attachments, that is stage wise due to old age and once for all at the time of death. So, if the attachment is given up voluntarily, the pain of separation will be minimal and the same will be unbearable otherwise. It is a choice given by God for us to choose between the two, and the decision is in our hands. In nature, we find everything, whether material or life, the life of birth or formation, sustenance, including growth, and destruction, is a cyclic process which goes on and on with varying time scales. For the purpose of representation, in our Hindu mythology, the birth or formation is associated with creation, and it is and allotted to Lord Brahma. The activity of sustenance to Lord Vishnu, and the activity of destruction dealt with by Lord Shiva. As we have defined our God as infinity, even though each of the three activities are handled by different deities, they are one and the same representation of the one Supreme Lord, which has neither name nor form and is devoid of attributes. Now we are moving to the next part of the poem, that is Sarvamu Tanayaina Vadevadu, the meaning of which is who is essence in everything. It is our practice to think and portray God as an embodiment of all that is good. We have seen projections of evil power committing atrocities, and that God punishes the evil power and rescues humanity. Well, this looks fine, and according to this, evil power is different from God, and that there is another existence which challenges God. This does not go well with the very definition of God, who is infinite and all pervading. Imagine the game of chess, two warring groups on the chessboard. Naturally, two people are playing the chess, one wins and the other loses. Sometimes the game ends up in a draw. It is imagined by the above concept that God is one player and evil power is the other player. So, sometimes evil power dominates the game, and sometimes God dominates the game, and it is our belief that in the end, God always emerges victorious like heroes in our movies. The crux of the problem here is the role of God we imagine. We identify God as a player, and here lies the mistake. God is not the player but the creator of the chessboard, that is the universe. Pieces on the chessboard, all forms of life, framed the concept and rules of the game of life and gave it to us for play. You see the picture there, Almighty God. You see the pieces in the chess play, pawn, bishop, knight, rook, queen, and king. These are ascending order of the power or something like that. On the left side, you see the authority in real life. So you see a citizen, and minister is having more authority than citizen. Like that, after minister it goes king, and then the emperor, and then Panchabhutas, and then Indra, and then personal God, and finally the impersonal God. That means the impersonal God is the highest authority, and he is not the king of this universe. Rather, he is the person who created this universe and the game of life. In fact, both good and evil prevails in us, and sometimes we stand by good, and some other times we stand on the evil side, and the choice is made by us depending on our thinking and circumstances. A person who always stands by the good side marches nearer to God, and the person who always practices evil things moves away from God. To be more precise, good and bad are relative words, as good for someone can be bad for others and vice versa. So, it will be more appropriate to say that person who always stands by dharma gets glimpse of divinity, and the person who stands by adharma becomes more ignorant. A person who perfects dharma in his life attains the status of God itself, and a person who perfects evil in his life attains lower level of birth that is to come. This is inherently programmed by God within us, and there is no escape to it. Even a professional killer feels bad internally for the action he has to perform unless he becomes mundane. We draw lot of satisfaction when we do something good for others. We often feel that injustice is done to us, and that becomes a trigger for falling on the bad side with the intention of vengeance. A proper perspective of understanding can help reduce the tempers. Imagine a person is killed in a forest and thrown into the bushes. First, there is law of the land, and it provides justice. In case if the killing is not noticed, there is no way it can reach the court. We have a question asking what happens to the culprit. Does he escape the justice? The firm answer is no. How can he escape? Even if he escaped the law of the land, there is divine court where law of dharma is in place. First of all, the incident is registered in the culprit's mind, and the constant fear he will have internally, and that itself is a punishment. Apart from that, he has to account for this act in the divine court, which will pronounce his destiny in the next birth depending upon all his past actions, including the above. Have no doubts that all actions, whether good or evil, will have its own fruits, and if this is not the case, then fundamentals of morality will be shaky. Let us see the picture of wealth and ill wealth. Wealth is the effect of good deeds, and ill wealth is the effect of bad deeds, which we call it as punyam and papam respectively in Telugu. So, in the bottom, you see there are five pictures. The first one is the desire, second one is the thought, third one is the deed, fourth one is the effect, and fifth one is the birth. Then, where the control points are indicated is defined there. So, it is the deed which creates either a punyam or papam, depending on whether it is a good deed or a bad deed. As shown, green in good deed is shown in green color, and bad deed is shown in red color. And also there is a caption: we reap what we sow. So, as seen in the picture, the yogi can control at the desire stage itself. common man can control at the thought stage itself, but once it is converted into a deed, consequences are impossible to control, and one has to be ready for the consequences to follow. You also see in the picture that human beings saw the birds flying and has generated the desire to fly, and then that desire to fly has generated into a thought process how to invent an instrument to fly, that is an aircraft, and then the thought has been converted into a deed by making trial aircraft and then flying at the beginning and all that, with the trials of failure, and this one finally success has come with the invention and perfection of an aircraft, including supersonic aircraft, and that is the reason why it resulted in birth of a global village, what we call it now. So that is the consequence of the desire to fly. Now, good or bad, the starting point of both is desire, which acts on the mind. Desire prompts the thought process in the mind. A yogi curtails all the desires at this stage except the one for realization of God. Desire or a thought in its form does not attract any effect unless it is converted into a deed. At this stage, the intellect guides the mind, and an individual normally has the capability to curtail at this stage. But however, if the desire is very impulsive, then it acts on the mind, and the mind ignores the warning given by intellect. As a result, the thought is converted into a deed with mind commanding the body through brain, and the deed is over. Human body, including brain, is an instrument of mind to convert thought into action. Absence of human body, the mind cannot perform any action which results in effect, however be the impulse of the desire. That is why every day, every moment is precious and an opportunity to do what we want to do. Once the deed is done, the effect takes over. If the deed is if the deed carried out is good, both mind and intellect are in agreement and peace prevails. Intensity of the desire increases. On the other hand, if the deed carried out is bad, having fulfilled, the intensity of the desire subsides, since mind and intellect are not in agreement with the deed carried out, and also the mind has become subdued now, it starts repenting now. Once a bad deed is performed, no one and not even God will come to the rescue, and one has to enjoy the fruits of it. Now the effect takes over, and depending on the nature of the deed, it adds to spiritual wealth or ill wealth. Depending on the net balance of both at the time of death, we will be better at the negotiating table to choose our next birth and comfort in that birth. The very fact that some are born with silver spoon and some are born with misery, some life forms are born as human beings and some other life forms are born as animals or creatures, etc. How do you explain this fundamental difference in birth? Our sages have long ago has attributed these differences to result of past actions that to accumulate past actions that accumulate over previous births. How could our sages say this with authority? It is because they have achieved that level of perspective. We are what our perspective is. Our perspective of the world. We always add our internal impression to what we see in the external world and form our opinion. In other words, it is a combination of something internal stored in our mind applied to what we see in the external world, which results in our reaction. For example, a person living in the city may fear more on seeing a snake than a person working in agricultural fields of a village where the incidence of seeing a snake is more frequent. In the pursuit of darkness, persons can see the same object as different things depending on their internal desire or impression in their mind, as illustrated below. You see the picture of our perspective of the world there, and we know that every mind has gathered certain impressions in their mind, which is internal. And if somebody see the world through the lens of bad, then he will be seeing the world as hell. If another person see the world through the lens of good, then he will be seeing the heaven. So the same thing. So it depends on both the factors, what is internal and what you see external. Under the darkness, for the same object which like a trunk of a tree, a thief sees a policeman, a fearing person sees a ghost, a lover sees his lady, the object being same, but depending on internal perception, the three different persons see the three different images. So once we change our internal, the external will automatically change for us. We perceive the world through our sense faculties, with the brain as the control tower under the command of mind. So called buddhi or intellect discriminates between good and bad and constantly provides alert or feedback mechanism to mind. Mind and buddhi or intellect are not self-effulgent and acts under the projected influence of soul, which is self-effulgent. Individual mind is framed under varied conditions for different people from birth, with factors contributing such as individual beliefs and thinking, past karma, social and surrounding influence, guidance and upkeep from parents and relatives, educational or knowledge background, and so on. Different people can have different internal perceptions depending on their frame of mind and experiences. The same person may be a friend to Mr. X and an enemy to Mr. Y, as the friend and enemy are already formed in the minds of X and Y respectively. Similarly, a well educated person may term an educated person as ignorant, whereas an uneducated person may term the same person as knowledgeable. We all know that the external world is very vast and we have very less control over it to change. Comparatively, it is very much under our control to change our internal through constant effort. So, change of internal is an easy option than to change our external world. If we think that this world is heaven, we will start perceiving all good things in this world, and the world will start transforming as heaven for you, with full of opportunities. Other side, if you think this world as hell, uh, uh, you will start perceiving all bad things in this world, and the world will start transforming as hell for you. In other words, after all hell and heaven are the two kinds of feelings in one's mind itself. So, hell and heaven are not elsewhere, but it is seen in one's own mind, depending on how you focus the antenna of your mind. So, change your internal, which is fully under your control, and the external will automatically change for you, but it takes time and constant effort. Beware that as a good mind can change a bad mind to good, a bad mind also can corrupt a good mind also. The latter is more easily done. So one has to consciously make his choice of his friendship. Our perspective depends on where we are and what we are. It is with this authority our sages have vehemently declared that justice provided in divine court is flawless, complete, and unavoidable, even if it escapes the law of land. Law of Dharma is implemented in an absolutely impartial manner not only for mankind but for all life forms. Law of the land and Dharma are different. Law of the land may vary country to country, but Dharma is universal, which not only applies to human beings but also to every life. Killing an animal or a bird may not be a lawful violation, but it is definitely a sinful deed according to Dharma. According to Dharma, every life has a right to live, and no one has any right to deny the same except in self defense. Only who has the power of creating the life has the authority to take life, and only God can create life. Imagine that if everything goes well with us for all the time, then who will even think about God? If there is no villain or evil in the movie, what will be the value of hero, and who will be there to talk about him? Only when evil is there, there is recognition and value for good. Adharma will have to be there to showcase the value of Dharma, and it is a lesson for us what to choose, and we are also taught about the consequences of both good and evil. Same way, all the dualities in this world and presumably universe itself is created by God in order to evolve ourselves towards truth. Never mind, we always learn by mistakes, and misery is a great teacher than happiness. This world of us is a stage, and this human life is a great opportunity, rather a boon for us to progress in the right direction. This is a karma bhumi, and we can do anything as long as we associate with this physical body. We can neither do good nor bad even if we want to, once we lose our association with this great mechanism called human body. In fact, we have paid a very high price by way of good efforts in our previous births to get this rare birth of a human being. You see the picture of opportunity. This is a race against rabbit and tortoise. Uh, you see the winning line there. So every day, every hour, and every minute is an opportunity to excel. So we should race against time, and we should not sleep our opportunities. So do not miss this golden opportunity to work for your salvation. Little we realize this, and every day is an opportunity provided for us for liberation. All these are provided by none other than God Himself. So, God is good, bad, and everything else. So, there is no separate evil, as good and bad are the two sides of the same coin, and we feel all this as long as we are influenced by the so called Maya or illusion. We are like a small worm crawling in a very small confined area, living for a very tiny spectrum of life, and the real hero of this cosmic game is the one who is running the show of cosmos with life in it, on whose order this Big Bang has happened, on whose order stars and galaxies have formed, on whose order the life cycle is happening on earth as we know, on whose order the nature is behaving the way it is, on whose order everything is happening in the universe and beyond. He is the supreme, and he is the one and only one with everything within him.